It's like, okay, I'll wait until the kids are a little bit older, or once I get a promotion at work, or once I retire. And then so the average retirement age, I think, is 64 in the US, and the average lifespan is 76. So most of these people are waiting till this retirement that might never come.
We need to shift perspective as well into looking at these as investments, really wrapping our head around investing in ourselves and our greatest aspirations and our families and loved ones and jobs, every aspect of being a human. If we shift to go, I'm investing in this, I think we're going to, probably get more creative around the things that we can do to support that vertical of our well-being. But B, I think it forces us to kind of, look for gratitude.
That's what you're going to care about at the end of your life, is these moments and these experiences that are worth way more than money. And in my life, I've seen drastic roller coasters between being very poor and seeing the top 1% and then back down to poor again and back up. I've seen drastic changes, and my happiness doesn't really follow that roller coaster, right? And I think that's the experience with a lot of people, is that they could be really poor as long as they're covering their needs, or they can be wealthy, and there's not a big difference in happiness.
You really remind the reader, and you're going to remind us here, to make someday today. Why do you think, which is great, by the way, I think it's an obvious but essential reminder that we could all do a little bit more of. But why do we keep putting off someday? What is the biggest reason we choose to put off our biggest goals and aspirations, you think?
So when my co-author, Joe Huff, and I were writing this book, that was the exact question we would be asking people, is why are you putting off all of these things that are supposedly the most important things to you in life? So we ended up doing this study of 20,000 people around the world and asking them that exact question. What are the things that you want to do in your lifetime?
20,000 people. That's a hell of a sample size.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, there was a few people
Respect.
that we talked to.
Respect on that N equals.
And it's sad. I mean, it's kind of interesting, but sad at the same time, that the number one reason why people didn't do the things they most wanted to do was that they just, quote, didn't get around to planning it. So that was number one. So the reason why people wait to plan things is because they believe in this fictional someday. That's not actually a real day. If you look at a calendar, someday's not on there. So.
True. Very true.
So all of these people would say some variance of oh, I wanted to get around to it. I just never did, because I thought that I would do it someday. But then something happened where maybe they got sick, maybe, one of their kids got sick, or, they had, someone in their family passed away, where something happened where they didn't actually get around to doing this thing that they wanted to do. So we always say make someday today, because you just really, truly never know when something's going to happen. And you need to start working on your goals and dreams now and not wait for a fictional day. I think the reason why we do this is because we make excuses for ourselves, and the excuses look and we all do this. It's not just these people. It's me, it's you, it's everyone. Say, oh, I'll do X when I graduate college, or once I find the love of my life, I'll do this. Or once
some particular major life event thing must happen before what we want can happen.
Yeah, these milestones. Right. It's okay, I'll wait until the kids are a little bit older, or once I get a promotion at work, or once I retire. And then so the average retirement age, I think, is 64 in the US, and the average lifespan is 76. So most of these people are waiting till this retirement that might never come.
To cram in all
to
your
cram in
dreams
everything.
In barely more than a decade.
Yeah, and it's do you really even want to do those things when you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s, etc.? Probably not. So they're pushing all of these things that they really want off until a fictional someday, which probably doesn't exist. So it's sad, but.
Sad but true. Sad but true. But hopefully no more for anybody listening right now. This is why we have these conversations, people. You mentioned, I'll do this, or I'll be happy when, I get this job, this promotion. And I think that's an obvious one for a lot of people. We think what we want most in life requires, and many times requires a certain professional financial advantage. But then I know a lot of people, and I definitely have been there myself, where we maybe get that promotion, we reach that financial advantage, but what we wanted is something different now. It's like once we level up, we automatically, or maybe even subconsciously, alter our goal, and now it gets pushed further back, even to another someday. Why is that?
For sure. And I've been guilty of that as well. It's like these goalposts. It's like,
Right,
okay,
yeah.
like once I put this book out, then I'm going to do this, or once I do this. And I think it's just comparison, and it's natural because when you're like leveling up in that way, you're surrounding yourself normally with people that are also leveling up. So you're constantly surrounding yourself with like the comparison trap.
So we and our environment are changing along the way, which, am I hearing you correctly, tends to influence those goals?
Exactly. But really, like, so when I get in that mindset, which I still do, but I really try to compare myself to myself versus the other people. Like, I can look at someone who, sold 10 million copies of a book and be like, man, I wish that was me. But even a year ago, I was like, man, I just can't wait to put out a book.
Oh,
right? So
what a perspective shift.
Yeah, like that's all I wanted. Like that was my biggest goal in life, is to write a book and to put it out. And all I wanted was for people to like it and to feel that their life was changed. And that has happened. Like maybe we'll never sell 10 million copies, but that wasn't ever the goal. So I need to compare myself to like myself yesterday versus somebody else, because even though those people that are like, much more successful, quote unquote, than me are inspirational.
Sure. Yeah.
I have to inspire myself.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Let's take, maybe the financial goal out of it, or the thing that requires that leveling up. A big part of your work and in the book is this overarching topic of experiential wealth. What does this mean, and what might it feel like, so that we can keep both this definition and sensation in mind as we progress through the rest of this conversation?
Sure. So experiential wealth to me is the greatest type of wealth that you can have, because at the end of your life, no one has a funeral for you and says, I loved Chase. He was wealthy, like he invested.
Unless I got some greedy kids and grandkids are already dividing up my estate. I don't know.
Something says that you will not have that, but I think you'll do the right thing. But
thanks, Granddad Chase. You really stacked up my 401k.
Yeah, no one's going to be like, man, those stocks he invested in were just so interesting, and that's my favorite thing about him. I
just love your Robinhood portfolio.
Your wife might say something like, I loved watching the sunsets with him, or your kids might say, like, I loved when we went to the national parks together. Your friends will say they loved like volunteering with you at like a shelter or something like that. They're never going to say anything financial. So to me, like experiential wealth is the most important thing, because that's what you're going to care about at the end of your life, is these moments and these experiences that are worth way more than money. And in my life, like I've seen drastic roller coasters between like being very poor and seeing like the top 1% and then back down to poor again and back up. Like I've seen drastic changes, and my happiness doesn't really follow that roller coaster. Right. And I think that's the experience with a lot of people, is that they could be really poor as long as they're like, covering their needs, or they can be wealthy and there's not a big difference in happiness.
You also talk about how our life isn't created to be maintained. I love that, because I think if nothing else, if the listener can walk away right now and just have that in mind, am I maintaining my life, or am I continuously creating it?
Right.
It's so important. And immediately for me, a lot of analogies come into mind, in the health and wellness and fitness space. We're either losing weight, gaining weight, or are we maintaining? But unique to goals and having this abundant lifestyle that you talk about, I think it's also very important, because if we look in the mirror right now and ask that hard question, am I creating a life this experiential billionaire life every day, or am I just maintaining it? I think we'll come face to face with some hard truths of complacency, comfortability, which I'm not saying those things are bad, but personally speaking, I'm not about that life or not about that for very long. That's the whole point of living a life ever forward, I say, is to have those check-ins with yourself and then challenge yourself and have unique and frequent enough stimuli to move you forward and get out of maintenance phase. Yeah. Why do you think so many people are living in maintenance and probably don't even realize it?
I think just because it is comfortable, but at the end of the day, like discomfort is the thing that makes you grow, right? You can't do anything big in life without being uncomfortable, in my opinion. You know, like going home every day from work, watching Netflix, going to bed, and like getting food delivered to you. Like we can live a very, very comfortable life these days.
I don't do that.
I mean, everybody does that. And I'm not saying that's even bad. Like, I mean, that's, you know, sometimes that's what you need, like to restore yourself, right? But if you do that every single day and then you wake up in 10 years and you're like, wait, I just wasted my 30s or my 40s or whatever. Like that happens to the majority of people. Will wake up and be like, what was I doing? And I think if I look at my own life, like my biggest regrets in life are the times that I spent being comfortable in like a relationship, for an example.
Oh, huge.
Like,
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like
I think that's where most people don't realize they're maintaining a life.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy, you know, 6 months, a year plus in that relationship to just like, oh, like they're not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. We can just be here.
Yeah. And I think it happens in jobs. I think those are probably the top two, I would say, in my life. Like I've spent too much time being in relationships that weren't working, but maybe they were very comfortable. And then in jobs that were comfortable and that I was like, it's just too hard to leave that job.
Right.
But then
the pay's too good.
Yeah, exactly.
The benefits are
golden
too good.
handcuffs.
Yeah.
It's and that happens to so many people, and I totally get it because it is comfortable and it's hard to change. But then the moment where you do change that is like where you really, you know, it's like, I think I talk about this in a different chapter in the book, but I talk about hermit crabs, and I like to say it's like being a hermit crab. It's like, you know, the hermit crab like leaves its shell, and then it's kind of like, you know, just looking for another one, and it's super uncomfortable, and then it finds a bigger
freaky
shell.
If you ever see a
naked it's totally weird.
Like,
naked hermit
something
crab.
about this is not right.
But then what happens is that it finds a bigger shell and it grows into it, and that's what happens when you get into these uncomfortable situations. I mean, a great example of that, like in my own life, that I like to think about is when I was a kid, I was absolutely terrified of public speaking. And now that's what I do professionally.
Right.
And if I
went at it head on.
Right. Like if I didn't move through that fear, like, you know, I don't know where I would be or what I would be doing at this point, but it's been such a great thing in my life to be able to like influence people by speaking. And I don't think I would have ever had that if I just didn't move past that fear. So, and that's uncomfortable. It's super uncomfortable, but it is what it is.
I want to get to the fear component in a moment, but we've now kind of brought up two really unique and familiar areas for, I think, everyone that I want to shine another light on: finances, job security, and relationships, another form of security. Do you think financial and relationship security, financial and relationship complacency are the two greatest pitfalls to not living an abundant life, or fast forwarding a year and going, like, damn, what was I doing? I wasted my time. I was comfortable.
I think those two things can be, for sure. And I'm not anti, corporate job, and I'm not anti-marriage, obviously, but I think that
any kind of professional
anything.
situation.
Yeah. No, I definitely think that those two contribute. And if you're with, say, like the wrong person who's not, feeding that more adventurous side of you, then that can also be a downfall, right? It's if the right person, the wrong person, whatever. But yeah, I would say that those are the top two.
Without maybe abandoning either or both of those, let's say a person is realizing maybe I'm comfortable in my relationship, maybe I'm comfortable in my job. I don't want to leave either right now. In fact, I want to lean into them. I want to challenge them. How would you recommend someone going about that? Kind of challenging the comfortability and security of a relationship in your current employment without really rocking the boat and, having to go on to the next thing or next person.
Sure. So I think, well, it's been proven that the number one way to like grow a relationship is, and that could be with your partner or with like a colleague, which is really important to have like friends at work, obviously. So I would say,
right, not just intimate relationships.
Like friends,
exactly,
colleagues,
yeah.
anyone. The number one way to grow
we all have some friends maybe we should break up with too. Or we're not feeding each other and growing together, like we used to.
We actually talk about that in the book. It's really funny. Like you probably should like ditch the friends that are bringing you down. And even though it sucks, that's the way it is. But the number one way to grow a relationship is to share new experiences together. So if you're, in a rut in a relationship, but you want to keep that relationship, and this happens to everyone. It's like, say you have kids and then you're just like kind of maintaining, it's like such a stressful life and everything. But the number one way to get out of that rut is to try new things together. And that's what our book is really about.
Right?
Yeah, spice it up. Yeah. And it can be like something as simple as like, taking cooking classes together, or like doing something really crazy, like going skydiving, or learning a new language together. Like it can be free, it can be cheap. It doesn't have to be.
There are those experiences again you're talking about.
Right. It doesn't have to be a trip to, Italy. It can be something that's like, right outside your door. Like there's plenty of things to do, but the problem is that people don't do new things. And then they think, oh, I have to go outside my relationship or outside of whatever. But really it can just be right there.
Can you help someone understand a little bit more here about the real value in experiences, especially ones that don't cost anything in terms of money? I think someone might be thinking, because I've definitely thought this, that's so cliche. Or if we just go to a different coffee house instead of the one we always go to, or if we take a cooking class, or we, cook red meat instead of white meat, just any small little thing you're thinking, is it really that simple? And can it really be that free? Can something as transformational as that to our relationships and our life really have zero to little financial commitment to it?
I think so. Some of the greatest experiences I've ever had have been things that I've had to pay for, of course. And I don't think like everything can be free, but I think some of the greatest things I've ever done are either free or next to free. It's like, I'll use surfing as an example. So I lived in LA for probably 14 years before I surfed. Like, why?
I haven't got up on board either. I'm 5.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, like why did I waste that much time thinking like, oh, I wish that I could do this, but I can't do it because I'm not going to be good at it. So one day I finally, like my friends had asked me to go, and I immediately came back with an excuse. I was like, oh, I don't want to. I don't feel good, whatever. And then I ended up going, and it ended up like totally changing my perspective and like almost changed my life because I loved it so much. And even though I'll never be great at it, like I'm never going to win the Olympics in surfing, but it's something that I love so much. And now I feel like a part of, and I ended up like moving, towns to be closer to the water.
No way. Wow.
Yeah. And now I'm just like so much more of in tune with nature, and I just love being in it. And I would have never had that experience had I never just said yes to something that I thought I wouldn't be very good at. And I think little things like that can change your perspective. Like even just going hiking, I know that's so cliche, but especially in Los Angeles, but it really does like calm your nervous system and really does like make you think like, wow, I'm so lucky. Like the gratitude is there and it's free. It doesn't cost anything. So I think some of the best things in life are free.
How would you help someone get to the ability to say yes? Because I think kind of getting to the fear aspect here, there are typically a lot of concerns and hesitations around doing anything new for most of us, unless you're just an adrenaline junkie and you're always seeking new. Many of us feel, and I think the argument can be made, that we thrive off of routine and consistency, call it discipline, but waking up at the same time, going to the same place for breakfast, going to the same gym, seeing the same people. There's a lot of familiarity in routine and can serve a lot of different goals. I'm no stranger to discipline. But that might be an excuse to continue to hide behind fear. How do we say yes when we're screaming inside no?
I love that question. And yeah, I agree with discipline. I love that word. And I think that we need to think about it in a little bit of a different way. Like for me, I love some routine. My life used to be a lot crazier, and I had lived in 2 different cities, and it was very like chaotic. And now I only live in one place. It's very calm, and I have my routine every morning. I drink coffee, blah, blah, blah. But like you can be disciplined with new things too, right? Say, every week you're like, I'm going to learn one new thing. I'm going to learn how to cook something new, for example. That costs like very little money, and it's free on YouTube to learn anything, right? So you can be disciplined about learning new things as well. So you can add that to the routine. But if you only have the routine of like the exact same thing, like, are you really going to be happy? Are you really going to remember that?
Yeah, you might be compounding and, doing the reps towards a overarching, bigger, longer goal. But I love how you're kind of reminding us here to prioritize and to build into our routine something new. This should be nothing new for anybody that's read James Clear's Atomic Habits, habit stacking. When there's something you want to change or add in that you believe is in support of a goal of yours, that's where I think a lot of people, and we know that's where a lot of people fall off the wagon, is because they're trying to make this entirely new life in support of this bigger life.
Sure.
But no, just bring it in, like, okay, as part of your morning coffee time, you're going to take 5 minutes of that time. Instead of scrolling your phone, you look up new recipes, to your point.
Right. And like I use cooking a lot as an example because I love to cook.
Everybody's got to eat too.
Yeah, everybody's got to eat. And it really does teach you a lot about other cultures and stuff. But say you had kids and your routine every week was like to order pizza for them. That's what I did when I was a kid. It was awesome. But guess what? I would have liked more is if my parents would have taught me how to make pizza.
Ooh,
like I would have remembered that way more, right? Like that's like a core memory. And like eating takeout pizza is not a memory. That's like everybody does that. So you can do these like little simple things, even if you had a chaotic life, you have kids, a crazy job, just those like little switches. It's like, I don't know, I guess another example with kids would be, if you gave them like a stuffed animal of like a giraffe, for example. Or you could like take them to the zoo and go see a giraffe. Like what is going to be more memorable?
Yeah, right. Yeah. How much are you going to spend on that stuffed animal versus maybe the family tickets on a discount day to the zoo?
It can't be that much, right? So it's just those little changes in your life where you can look back and be like, I'm so glad that I did that, even though it was maybe slightly less comfortable or less, slightly more expensive or something, but it's going to be like a memory for your kids to like learn later.
I think we need to shift perspective as well into looking at these as investments.
Exactly.
Really wrapping our head around investing in ourselves and our greatest aspirations and our families and loved ones and jobs, every aspect of being a human. If we shift to go, I'm investing in this, I think we're going to, probably get more creative around the things that we can do to support that vertical of our well-being. But B, I think it forces us to kind of, look for gratitude, look for an ROI, and just, even get more creative in ways that we probably aren't, right?
Yeah, and I mean, our whole book is about how to invest in experiences because that is truly the most important thing, in my opinion, to do in your life.
You're in good company. I believe it. To kind of wrap up this fear component, you have this great quote in there from Jim Morrison, actually, lead singer of The Doors, right? I just second guess myself there for a second, but and this quote goes, expose yourself to your deepest fear. After that, fear has no power, and the fear of freedom shrinks and vanishes. You are free. You then kind of go on to expand on this and say that fear is an invitation to evolve. And quote, with the right training, your brain can unlearn its fear of virtually anything. How do we train away from fear?
It's really exposure, and I'm sure everyone has heard this before, but it's just being exposed to the things where you think that you are afraid of. And I think an example from my own life is I did this whole long road trip for many years around going to all of the 50 states. And that was one of my favorite things I've ever done in my life.
That's an amazing goal.
It's
Who wouldn't
so
like
worth
to do
it.
that? I think most people,
Yeah.
that'd be really cool.
And it's not like I just, quit my job and road tripped around for a year. That was like over a long period of time, right? So it wasn't like outside of my normal life. But
Again, realistic.
yeah,
not some
realistic.
crazy
It's
financial
really not that
bargain.
difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is not. So I think the average American sees like less than 9 states in their life. So
That's actually more than I would think.
it might be 8, but it's around
That's
there.
not that bad,
Yeah.
but out of 50, come on, guys. What are you
Yeah.
doing?
So for that, I think that that's a good example because I'm not going to get political, but around like 2016 when it was like it started to become so divided, it really helped me as a person like see why certain people would think that the world is that way and like where they're coming from. And it really opened my perspective. Like when I was traveling through all of these states that like a lot of people that grow up in New York or LA, and I'm from Michigan, so I, don't consider myself truly part of that. But a lot of the coastal people like don't ever see the Midwest, and then a lot of the Midwesterners don't ever see the coast. So there's this big divide in people. But if we could just like talk to each other and like see each other and like see where people live and like how they live their daily life, like that truly made me so much more open to other people's views.
Oh, it has to.
And now I'm like
Absolutely.
so directly
Yeah.
in the middle because I don't necessarily agree with a lot of things that people say and do, but I can see how they got to that conclusion. And so I'm not afraid of, the other anymore in that sense. Like I can like live in LA and be like, oh, those people in, X state are like the other, but I don't think that way anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that just the exposure to like other people and other cultures is so important. And obviously that goes for worldwide as well. Like, I've been lucky to be like, I think it's at 40 countries now.
Ooh, all right.
Yeah.
Nice.
And every place I go, I'm like, I feel like I grow like a little bit
Yeah.
just because I can see like, oh, wow, that's like how, like I was just in India and, it's now the world's biggest population. And to me, that was such a growing experience because I'm like, wow, the US is so small in comparison to that. And we always think that we're like the big bad guy or whatever.
We like to believe so, right? And
Yeah.
in many ways that's true. But
And we are in some ways, but it's like,
especially
then there's
the
this,
ego.
yeah, then there's this other place that has the biggest population in the world. And it's like, okay, that's the real deal.
I think the same is true when we look at history. Another way to change your perspective around where you are and what you're doing with your life is, anybody that's grown up in America, you've probably studied American history. Myself, coming from Virginia, a colony, original colony state, one of the first 13 colonies, the history of Virginia, the history of America was huge. Like, oh, wow, like 200 years ago, we were going through this. We had a blacksmith and we were building, tree houses, on the farm. And then you go travel anywhere, literally anywhere else in the world.
Literally
and it's
anywhere.
like, oh, that's cute. Your country is how old? I had this flashback to this moment as a kid thinking about how wild it is that our how long of a history America has. When I was just recently in the UK. And my wife and I, one of our travel hacks is this is like the only touristy thing we do when we go anywhere. We love getting on, if they have it, the big bus, hop on, hop off tour bus.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because usually it's very, very cheap transportation and you can get on and off all throughout the day. And we love to get this kind of perimeter lay of the land. And then we'll get off and do our exploring and get our 30,000 steps in. But just we were listening to this one part about London, this area by Buckingham Palace, and just the dates they were saying and the, this king and that queen and these people. I was just like, wow. These people, we are riding in a big bus on these streets for thousands of years of history. it's crazy. And just immediately made me think differently about my home country, not in a negative light, but just, wow, we're babies. Like we are having baby experiences. You know, we have so many more experiences to dive into.
I mean, that's why, again, not trying to be political, but I think the U.S. has so many problems because of that, because it's still new, you know, and a lot of people don't realize that it's new unless they travel other places.
We just recently, in the long line of evolution and history, we barely just started crawling.
Right, exactly.
The rest of the world are upright human beings.
Yeah, I mean, like, look at like Italy, for example. It's like, it's built like an actual lasagna. Like if you go below like there's thousands and thousands of years of like civilization.
Oh my gosh,
you
yeah.
know? It's crazy. Or like, you know, I was just in Egypt, and I mean, seeing the pyramids is like just mind blowing.
One of my biggest life goals.
Yeah, it was one of my biggest life goals. And this year I checked it off the list, and I'm just so grateful that we went, especially with all that's happening right now in the world. I'm just like so happy that we did it. You just never know.
All right. So I'm kind of having an ADD brain moment right now, but I do think it's very spot on to what we're talking about here. Changing perspective and thinking experientially. When I shared with you, I was recently I sound like a tool just talking about all these travel spots.
Me too. And I'm so not, like I came from nothing. So like to even have these experiences.
I don't mean this in a negative light. I grew up in a double wide and in the middle of nowhere. So with a lot of hard work and positive attitude and a little bit of money, anything's possible. But what I was going to say was when I started reading your book after we first met, I was in Reykjavik, Iceland, for one of my best friend's weddings. And I sent a picture to you. And I remember you talking about Iceland, and you're like, it's one of my favorite places. And I do this a lot. I wonder if anybody can relate. It's like one of those things when you realize that maybe you and I, we only have known each other for a couple months now, but maybe we find out we were in the same undergraduate class years ago. And then I immediately go, oh, wow, we were together, but we didn't know each other. That just kind of blows my mind sometimes. But I was thinking experientially here, I'm having this experience of being in, for the first time, one of your favorite places in the world that you've been to at least once before. So I immediately was looking around. I was going, oh man, I wonder if like, you know, am I in the same spot where she was? Because downtown Reykjavik's not that big. No. And I was like, oh, maybe did we go to the same coffee house? Like, it's so what's going on there when maybe, you know, we ourselves are having a new experience, but it's like inception experience. We can tap into another level of experiences by tapping into the experiences of others.
I think it's just another way to connect. And that's one of my favorite ways to connect. A good example is I went to this program called the Hoffman Institute in Northern California.
What is that?
It's like a retreat, but saying it's a retreat, it makes it sound way more bougie than it is.
Before, right? Yeah, I was like, why does it sound familiar?
It's not bougie, but it's a place where they basically like you talk about your childhood trauma and you kind of rewire your brain and like these patterns that are like in your brain from when you were a kid. And maybe it wasn't even that your parents were terrible or anything like that. Maybe it's just like you do certain things in your life because that's how you were like taught.
Maybe you got made fun of at the playground or something. Or...
So it's like a way to make you feel like it's mind blowing. I don't even want to like go too deep into it because people should just go. But
that's like inner child work.
Yeah, inner child work. It's so good. And I love that. One of the best things I ever did for myself. But so that experience, when I see other people that have been there, I'm like immediately bonded to that person.
Yes.
And I'm like, I just love that person.
Yeah.
Right. So, and the same could go for a lot of experiences. Like when you were in Iceland, I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I could like talk to you about that because I just love it so much. And I want you to see all of these crazy things that I saw.
Oh, you should have let me know. Happy to hit all the Bridget spots.
And talk about like perspective. I mean, nature, like the nature of Iceland. I mean, I did a road trip around the perimeter of Iceland and just thinking about how long those things have been there. You're like, my problems don't matter because these things have been here for millions of years. So
I want to go back. Actually, I know you said this isn't going to turn into a child development, inner child work podcast. I promise we've done that.
I mean, I would be happy to talk about that all day long.
But it gets me thinking, you know, I'm just thinking experiential and all the different ways that we can have different experiences or begin to imagine the types of experiences that we want to support a fulfilling life. going back into a past experience, positive, negative, neutral, there's a way to revisit that and redevelop that relationship. So maybe it wasn't as pleasant, in our perspective, but we learned to find acceptance in it, and we can move on. So therefore, that experience in the past with our own selves or somebody else now takes on a totally different meaning, which from that moment on changes your present moment and your future. What about going the other way? Can we, let's say, okay, like this is really what I want, and it's going to take X amount of time, X amount of dollars, X amount of whatever to get there, and being very realistic and not putting it off. Can I get there ahead of time? Can I tap into this future experience to really try to understand what the perspective I need to adopt now is to make sure I'm in alignment with getting there, and extracting all of the meaning out of it that I hope to, that I want to, in support of whatever my biggest life goal is? Can we kind of time travel in these experiences?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess it goes along with like visualization and all of that.
Okay.
But I think for that, like a great exercise to do, if you say you have this big experience down the road, you're like, okay, I can't afford it right now, or I can't, take the time right now, but I'm going to start planning it, right? So I like to call this like a high ROI experience. Say it's like going to Italy, for example. And I only say that because a lot of people, that's like their big life dream, which is a great dream. One of my favorite places as well. But say that's your big goal, but you're like, I can't do it tomorrow, right? So I'm going to like take these small steps to make that experience in the future the best that it can possibly be. So today you're like, I'm going to download Duolingo and I'm going to learn a few words. And then I'm going to look up a recipe.
I'm going to find the best Italian playlist on Spotify.
Exactly. Like I'm going to listen to some cool Italian music.
I'm only eating spaghetti now until I get there.
And then like every week you learn how to make like one new dish, right?
There you go.
From like a cookbook. And then
Chef Bridget's back.
Yeah, exactly. I talk about food constantly. I love food. But and then you think about like, what do I want to drive there? Like, do I want to rent a Fiat? So I'm going to like Google how to rent a Fiat. And I'm going to Google like what's the best like route through Tuscany, or what's the best, say you try like a wine that you really like at a restaurant. You're like, I'm going to find the best place to have that wine in Italy. So you have all of these things to do, and you're like building up these like little experiences on the way to like this big experience. So even at the end of the day, say you never go to Italy, but you have like,
it seems like you kind of did.
You had like 100 different experiences.
You might have made your brain believe you have.
Exactly. And you're like, some Italian, you know how to cook, how to like, tell what's an Italian wine versus like a French wine or something. So you're like building all these little things.
You're expanding your world.
Yeah, exactly.
Before ever leaving it.
But a lot of people don't do that. They're just like, it's just going to be go to Italy or never go anywhere. And then they don't do it. But you could make time for these small things on the way to the big thing.
Okay, so let's rein it in a little bit here. For the person that's like, screw you guys who apparently travel all the time, or I'm never going to get there, or I believe I'm not going to get there, or I don't want to hear that right now because I'm salty for whatever reason. Let's bring it home. How can we build this experiential life, be an experiential billionaire here and now? What I mean is, how can we really look at our life, our world right here within the four walls or wherever we are right now, and tap into these larger than life experiences when we maybe feel like my life isn't that great, my world isn't that great, my job isn't that great. Sure, I would love to go to Italy one day, but screw you guys, I'm stuck right here, right now.
Yeah. I think figuring out, I think happiness in that general thing is figuring out what you want and why you want it. And that sounds oversimplified, but
it's got to be true for a reason.
It's true for a reason. And a lot of people are living for somebody else or doing the things that, somebody else wanted them to do. I think that the number one regret at the end of life is like not living for yourself, right? So
where's Ben when you need him?
Yeah.
Shout out Ben Nempton.
Shout out Ben.
Bucket list. He'd have that stat down.
He definitely has it down. But what he says about that is correct. And that's from some research out of Cornell, but also from the study that we did. That's what everybody said. The people that we asked that were all 65 plus, they all said it was their biggest regret was something that they didn't do, not the things that they'd done.
So not something that they did do. I was like, I wish that didn't happen. Or
You
I wish
would
I
think
did
it was
differently.
that, right? Like, I wish I wouldn't have done this.
Yeah, when I think regrets, that usually comes top of mind. It's like, I shouldn't have been in that relationship for that long, or I shouldn't have done this thing. That's interesting.
And for me, like, it definitely was that. It was like I shouldn't have like done something for so long. But a lot of people, they just say, I wish I would have taken that chance. So to your question, I think instilling urgency is really important to figure out what you want, because you don't want to go to that quote someday.
Right.
So
what do you mean by urgency? It's like we need to create a timeline. We need to give ourselves a checklist of when and what.
Right, exactly. So a lot of people don't think about urgency because they think they have more time. And I don't want to make this conversation all about death, but that is where I'm going.
Memento mori,
So memento mori. It's a very common exercise, but not everybody knows about it. So what it is 76 boxes. That's the average age of an American lifespan. It's slightly different around the world, but
by the way, this visual in the book,
it's scary.
I was like, what? Like all of my life is just in half a page,
right? And so this year I have this printed out, and I put it like on my fridge, and I look at it every single day. It's not meant to be like depressing. It's meant to just instill urgency, because there's only 76 boxes. I'm 38. I'm exactly halfway through.
I'm with you.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you look at that and you're like, I'm already 50% done. But the society has told me that middle age is 50. So, but that's not true.
I plan on living to at least 110.
I mean, me
so
too. But
that 76 needs a few more boxes.
I mean, we can plan it all we want, but like the reality
yeah.
is like, that. So I try to plan it around that. So I have 50% left of my life if I'm average. Hopefully I'm not average. And if you look at it that way, you're like, okay, now I have I have 38 boxes left. If I want to go to like 38 new places, say in my lifetime, I got to start planning like one a year now. If I want to, say I want to see my parents, like, right now I only see them like once a year. So maybe they only have 10 years left. So I'm only going to see them 10 more times.
Wow.
Like, that's scary. So I need to like instill that urgency in my life to like do these things that I want to do now. Say I want to like write 2 more books in my life. Like, I'm going to plan like what years that's going to happen. So I think it's just planning. We did this exercise in the book called Treasure Map.
Yeah.
And it's
I love this.
Yeah, it's
Can you walk us through the treasure map exercise?
Sure. Yeah. So after you do the memento mori is like a good time to do this, because then you're really in the space of like, wow, I have less time than I thought. And the treasure map starts with, so say your doctor just called and they're like, Chase, sit down. We have some bad news. You only have 1 year left to live. You're like, okay. So now your time is like finite. It's like, you thought maybe before that you have like an infinite amount of time, which is like what a lot of people think.
It's the assumption.
It's the assumption.
It's the audacity we all have that needs to be checked, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're not all like, 5 years old. We needs to be checked. So now you have a year left to live. So what are like the top 10 things that you're going to do in that year? You're probably hopefully going to choose the things that are the most important things to you. So this is kind of different than like a bucket list, right? Because it's not all of the things that you might have time to do someday. It's it's just in a year. And you look at that list and you're like, why am I not doing any of these things? So the exercise, you write down the top 10 and then you look at it and you put an asterisk next to all the things that you're currently working on. Usually the average answer is 1 or 0 things.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Really?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Come on.
And we do this exercise like every day with people. So the next part of the exercise is like, we take that same idea and we make it 30 days. So now you just have 30 days to live. What are you going to do in that 30 days? And then we take it one step further. You have 24 hours left to live. Obviously, the 24 hours ones is not like I'm going to go on a safari. It's like I'm going to call my mom.
Right.
I'm going to I'm going to forgive this person.
I'm going to sit on FaceTime with every person that matters in my life until their battery runs out or I run out.
It's like, or it could be something so simple like I'm going to go sit on the beach and look at the ocean. It's like, okay, but, or like go to the woods or something. It's like, okay, go do those things today. Like how many of those things are on your to-do list today?
Yeah.
Like probably none. And I love that because a lot of people will say, I'm going to call an old friend or I'm going to forgive someone. And I'm like, please do that today because you truly never know. Like you could get hit by a bus today and then you'll be like, I wish I would have done all these things.
Yeah, truly. But not to keep going down the morbid rabbit hole here.
Yeah, but, I feel like I'm always talking about death now, which is very strange.
I think it's important to remember when we're looking to build an experiential life, why? Yeah. It's because what are you really going to take with you? And when you think about these experiences and you get very granular about the timeline and the finite existence we all really have, I think it sifts through a lot of the bullshit probably in your life or the excuses you're making or the people you're not keeping or keeping in your life. But to really kind of bring it to the home of the show, I was telling you before we recorded here, Ever Forward comes from my father. And I only know this now, being on the other side of it. But when I came home after I had just enlisted in the Army, and I came home for my first Christmas. And this was around the time, like, we kind of knew something was going on with my dad, but my parents didn't really tell us, me and my brother and sister and the family. And all of a sudden they decided, I flew in to, Roanoke, Virginia, this tiny little airport. Like, hey, guess what? We're getting on another airplane. You, me, your stepmom, brother, and sister, we're all going to New York for Christmas. We're going to have a New York Christmas. That's awesome. And this was the first time all of us were together because my parents, were divorced, and so we're always kind of like changing holidays. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is so cool. At the end of that trip is when they shared with us my father's diagnosis. He was terminal, maybe a year to live, which he did have about another 10, 11 months. But what that actually was him coming to terms with, wow, I'm at the end of my days. What do I want to do? I want to spend Christmas with my family. That's really the only thing that matters.
I totally agree.
And I think this is a great reminder for every listener to, okay, Italy's great. It's going to be there. All these things are great. These experiences are great. But if you took that end of the line experience and brought the line closer, what would that experience look like? Who would be with you?
Exactly.
And I would challenge
where would
us.
You be?
Exactly. And that's the challenge I want to put on everybody. I think it's to do that to really get crystal clear on what matters to you.
Yeah, I mean, this exercise is so powerful, and I'm so grateful to people that do it and then reach out later and tell us what they did. Some of my favorite things is like who they're around and where they are. There's been people that have like moved, like after I did this exercise, I moved closer to nature because that's what I would want to do in my last year is to be in nature.
Wow.
And I'm like,
and how cool is that they realized that sooner?
I love that. Yeah, I wish I would have done this when I was really young, but at the same time, like, I've been so lucky with what I've done. But yeah, and a lot of people, they'll be like, oh, I was going to wait to like give back and do these things until I was older, and I did it now. And now I'm so happy that I'll always have that experience. And I'm like, oh.
I feel like I use that exact same reasoning for savings accounts over the years. It's like, oh, no. When I make more money, I'll save more money. I can't afford to save anything right now. I can tell you over the years, when you need to tap into that savings account, you're very glad you air quote here, only put away $100 when you think you need to put away 1,000 kind of things. That reasoning.
It's the same with experience.
Exactly.
It's like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did that. It's like you tap into that nostalgia and that will save you. It's like, if you save a memory, one day the memory will save you.
Oh, ooh.
And say that again, please. If you save a memory, one day the memory may save you. And that's so true like for me, I went through this like crazy year in 2020 where I got really depressed and basically just dominoes fell in my life.
Wow.
I got separated. I moved cities. My business wasn't going well. It was just a million things going wrong at once. Obviously, COVID happened. And then one of the really, really small things that I did that was very cheap and very easy was just print out like some of my best memories and like
photos.
yeah, like photos of like me and my friends,
Uh-huh.
like in, maybe it was just like us on a taco night or something. It didn't have to be crazy. Or it was like us in Iceland, for example.
Yeah.
And like print it out and remember like, okay, before these times I had bad times as well. But then I got through it and I can get through this. And I think it's really important to like make those memories because then you can go back to them. And even if like you were saying about negative experiences, it's like even if it was negative, like maybe it's positive now. And I just love that.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm wondering, is this kind of the part of your story? Because I wanted to kind of get your personal tie-in here of, you quote, had the life. Correct me if I'm wrong, Forbes 30 under 30. You were getting all these celebrity shout outs from like Kim Kardashian, US presidents. Yet you write in the book how going to fill up your car at the gas station, you were still checking your bank account. Are these kind of the low lows you were talking about? And was that the technique you used to get through them?
It's funny. Like that's not actually.
Oh, there's more shitty stuff. Okay, great. I love this journey.
I've lived quite the life. No, I mean, I'll go like way back before that. So I grew up in Flint, Michigan. I did not come from anything. And I know that it sounds to a lot of people when we talk about, traveling the world that we probably both came from a lot of money, but that is not the case.
Nope.
So I grew up in
love,
Flint.
not a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a place that's famous for like having a water crisis and Michael Moore movies. But I was always really, really into music, and that was like the love of my life. That was my passion. And very long story short, I started working in music when I was 14. I did jobs like picking up trash at music venues and getting coffee for people at radio stations.
Working in music, she said.
Yeah, working. There's not a lot of music jobs in Michigan.
I'm in the music industry. Didn't I see you picking up water bottles at
That's
the festival?
literally what I was like, but someone was on stage.
That's the attitude. That's the perspective.
But it was like, it was hard, and I was doing that stuff for free or $5 an hour.
To put you in closer proximity.
Yeah, to put me in
to
proximity
this experiential life.
to like my dreams, and like sometimes you just have to do those really hard, difficult things. And, at the time I was literally like living out of my car and like, it was really, really hard. But like that led me to working in the actual music industry. Right. And I would have never had that experience without these like little things that were building up. And so I worked for Universal Music Group for about a decade. And I went from like the mailroom, in Detroit, I was making like 20 grand a year.
Oh, it's like one of those stories.
Oh, yeah.
Mailroom to boardroom?
Well, I wasn't exactly in the boardroom, I wish.
Same floor as the boardroom?
Yeah, I was actually
boardroom
in
adjacent?
I went from the Detroit office, which obviously no longer exists. That was like when music was different than it is now. But I ended up moving to LA, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me. And so like having these like small things build up to that really changed my life. And I was around all of these people that were becoming incredibly successful. Like I was at the very start of like, the Taylor Swift, Bieber, Drake, the Weeknd.
Our love, Abel.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Weeknd.
Great.
And
yeah, that was actually the last artist I worked with there. But
yeah, I fanboyed out when I heard you say that before. It's one of my favorite artists.
Yeah, and it was really fun, but I was also like never making a lot of money. I was just like having these incredible experiences that like most people might dream about, especially in their 20s. But I was never like, oh, I'm going to drive a Maserati or something. But from there, so I'll just give you another, like some life background. So from there, I ended up seeing this video on YouTube of a woman hearing for the first time. And that made me think about how important music had been in my life and how if I could give that gift to someone, that would be the greatest thing ever to like help somebody hear.
Yeah,
like
amazing.
How cool would that be? So I ended up starting a company that is called Listen, and we make headphones and speakers, and we give the proceeds to this charity called Starkey Hearing Foundation. And that's the whole reason why I've been able to travel around the world, right? Is
Wow.
because I was giving this whole time. It wasn't just for fun. It was like actually a purpose. Since 2012, we've been able to help over 50,000 kids here for the first time.
Oh, that's amazing. Wow.
So it's been really fun. But what you're referencing is like the Forbes thing was actually the impetus of Experiential Billionaire. So when I was going through all this, like, quote unquote success, the reality was that we were giving away all of our money and then spending the rest on traveling around the world and helping people.
Okay.
Which was awesome, right? Like it was the greatest thing. We never got rich. We never were like Dr. Dre selling, beats to like Apple for $3 billion. But we ended up like getting on all these lists like Forbes 30 under 30, and I had people reach out to me like from high school or from my hometown and ask me to borrow money, and it was just really funny because I was like,
because look, she made it, she's got to have it, swimming in it.
So I would just be like,
actually, can you float me $100?
Yeah, so I need to pay my bills.
Damn.
But we would just, me and my business partner would just laugh about it because we would say like, well, we're not exactly billionaires, but we are experiential billionaires.
And that's where we get the term.
And that's like, it started from like an inside joke because it was really true. Because like if you would present me with like some huge bank account, or you could present me with like what I've done in my life so far, like I would choose that 100 times over. Like all the things that we've done to help people has like made my life so rich and so much better than I could have ever imagined when I was a kid.
Oh, amazing. I love to hear that.
So it's the greatest thing in my life was to be able to travel the world and help people. So that's where that came from. And yeah, I feel like I was living the life. Even though I never, quote unquote, got rich, I feel so wealthy.
Along your journey and in the book, you definitely drive home this point of play. Mm-hmm. And I loved it because I think it's such an important contributing factor to this experiential billionaire lifestyle that you talk about. And also for us to just really have fun with our life and have fun with our goals and remind us to not be so serious and to not just, check something off your list and not actually sit with it and be with it and play with it. Why is play so important, and what role does it play in contribution to having this experiential lifestyle and just overall fulfillment, I would say, meaning of life?
Yeah, I think you're right, is that everything doesn't have to be so serious all the time. And the things that you might remember are like the silly, weird things, right?
Right, yeah.
Like an example is, so this is so ridiculous. But me and my friends, I have 5 girlfriends that every single year for the last 14 years, we've gone to the mall in Burbank and we go sit on Santa's lap and take a picture.
As adults.
As adults. This is for the last 14 years. We sit in the same exact formation.
You've got a timeline of this photo. That's amazing.
I'll send you it.
That's amazing.
It's super funny. And like, even though our, families might change, like a lot of them have kids now and whatever, we're like, no kids in the photo.
I might have to co-sign on this. I like this idea a lot. That's great.
And so every year we do this and we can like see over time, like how this changes. And like that, it might cost $20, right?
Yeah.
For like a photo. It is every single year I look forward to it, and it's so funny. And we always post it like online and we can see like how each other have changed. But even if I never, like a couple of these girls have moved away and like, grown their families and whatnot and have different jobs or whatever. But every year I know that I get to see them for like at least one thing. And it's so silly and so stupid, but it is hysterical. And we laugh like for like hours every year. So just those little things are like, you're going to remember that.
Yeah.
Like I'm always going to remember that. It's just making things more interesting. I use an example in the book that I love wine, and I started making my own wine during COVID as like my little pandemic project. So fun and so interesting. But when I finished the wine, I had like a party, like a small party, where I had everyone, when they entered, they had to do a song about the wine.
Like off the cuff,
Yeah.
freestyle.
Oh no, they like prepared it.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
it was like a competition.
Even better.
Yeah. So
She means business.
yeah, I mean
All right,
business.
all right.
But even though it was, meaning business, quote unquote, it was one of the funniest nights of my life. Like just watching my friends like be silly. Like when is the last time that you like made up a song and like performed it for your friend? Like as a joke.
Never.
Never,
Yeah.
right? Or maybe when you were a
Not
kid
yet.
though.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Right. As a kid.
Like you probably used to do all of those things as a kid. Like I'm gonna get up and like do a talent show for my family, or I'm gonna like make up a joke or make up a song. But like we don't do that as an adult, as an adult. So I just thought it would be like a funny thing to do, and that's like an easy way to make a memory that you would not have had otherwise. I've had a million like wine tastings in my life, but like I don't remember most of them. Like I remember that.
Well, it's probably because you had too many wine tastings.
Probably. But like, I'm always gonna remember that, even though like obviously the wine wasn't that good.
Right.
And we were just eating pizza. Like, it wasn't like it was some big expensive thing. It was just like at my apartment. But it was the most fun thing ever. And I like doing things like that, like having themes around like dinners or something. It's just like makes it fun, Do things that are like when you were a kid that you would do. One of my favorite questions from the survey that we did of 20,000 people was, what was your favorite thing you did as a kid? And do you still do it? And why not?
Oh, do you still do it?
Yeah.
Great addition.
So what would you say?
I would say most people don't. And why not is probably because they deem it to be, that's something a child does.
Yeah.
That's not what an adult does.
And it's like, but would you still want to? The answer is yes.
They all probably get that mischievous grin. They're like, yeah.
Like a lot of people will say like, oh, I used to ride horses when I was a kid. It's like, but I don't anymore. Or I used to go ice skating or, play tag. It's like, you can still do that.
Right.
But they're afraid that people will judge them or whatever.
Or they might even judge themselves.
Yeah. And you don't need to. Like, have fun. Life is short. Like, have a good time. Yeah. I just forgot what I was going to say.
I got a question for you if you're pausing there. How can we maybe get others on board to these great, low barrier to entry, maybe even free experiences that build such important core memories if maybe they themselves don't quite see the value in it? It's like, I got this person, this family member, these people in my life that I'm trying to change my life and adopt these changes here right now, but they're just not on board. And it's important to me for them to be on board because that's the experience I'm trying to build.
Yeah.
How do we, I guess, be more inclusive to other people and be more inviting and ideally give them the same experience that we're trying to get?
I think that's a great question. And this is something that I haven't really talked about. What I really like the concept of is, so we have like the holidays coming up, right? So think of like one person that you're going to buy a gift for. Like instead of buying them a gift, like get them an experience that you know that they would like.
Yes.
And maybe they'll return the favor.
Yeah.
Right? And they'll do something that you want to do with them.
Yep.
One of my favorite things to do is, we call this exercise like best day ever. It's like just take a whole day and do things that you want to do locally that are like all of your favorite things in one day.
This is a great date idea too, by the way.
Yeah, totally.
I've done this a couple times with my wife. Yeah, I didn't call it best day ever, but same thing.
Yeah.
If you can make it about your significant other, you're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You're welcome, future
Also,
you.
with just like a friend or whatever,
right,
like I love doing this because most of the time it's something that's really cheap. It's like, okay, like let's, watch the sunset. Let's go for a drive down PCH. Let's do like, listen to this. Let's go surfing.
As part of many of the things, we did a hop off bus tour in LA.
Oh my God.
Yeah, which I said we only normally do when we travel, but I was like,
I also love that, being a tourist in your own
Exactly.
town.
That's what we did.
So fun.
Yeah.
I love doing that. So if you do that for someone, like hopefully they'll want to do that for you, right? Maybe not, but that's a good way to like get them involved.
At least you'll plant that seed, hopefully. And then I'm never about that tit for tat kind of life, but you can take note of the people. And this is a great way to establish healthy boundaries in relationships and just be mindful of, okay, maybe my experience needs to change because they're not picking up what I'm putting down kind of thing,
Yeah. And you never know. Like you could go do something that your friend or family member loves and you are always like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But you might end up loving it.
Yeah.
Like I went hunting with my dad last year. And when I was growing up, my parents were both hunters and I was like, this does not interest me. Right?
Same. Yeah. I grew up middle of nowhere. Hunting was not my thing.
Not
Everybody
at all.
else. Yeah.
Right. But I was like, you know what? My parents are getting older. Like, I'm going to go do the one thing that I know my dad loves.
Do it for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to do it just because, like, that's a core memory, right? Like, he's going to remember that. I'm going to remember that. So I went and then I ended up loving it.
Really?
This is something that I never thought I would be interested in, right? But I loved it. And I think it's just because I love nature and I love, like, it just felt very like, wow, people have been doing this for a million years, like.
Right. That's how we got here.
Natural,
yeah.
right? So trying things that other people like that you might not be like initially open to is super important, I think, to like expand your horizons.
And I love what you talked about there of, it seems like you kind of enjoyed the whole experience, but you hit on one key component of the experience is that, I'm out in nature and I know that I love that. And I think that's a really important reminder to pick up on is that when building these grandiose experiences or maybe trying to find value in experiences we already have or know are coming, if we can't get on board with the full picture, all right, what's a component of that?
Right, exactly.
It's going to most likely look and feel different, but that's kind of the point, right?
That's so funny. Yeah, you can just choose like one thing that you know that you'll enjoy. Like I know I'm going to enjoy sitting outside in like the beautiful fall weather and like look at the leaves and stuff. And like if I can just get that, maybe I'll like the other stuff.
There you go.
Never thought about it that way.
Well, you kind of wrap up the book with a great little bow. And before we get to my final question, I want to ask you this. Another quote, this one's from Robert Byrne. The purpose of life is a purposeful life. Is a purposeful life something we ever really achieve? Like, I got it, it's a thing, it's a finish line. Or is it more of a mindset that we must learn how to adopt and keep with us in pursuit of that fictional or realistic kind of timeline or benchmark, excuse me?
Wow, it's a deep question. I think that you can achieve it. I'd like to think that everything I've done in purpose with my business and whatnot, giving hearing, has like led me to a more purposeful life. And I think purpose really, it drives me, like money does not drive me. Like and I'm so not anti-money. I'm so not like, you know what I mean? I don't, this book isn't about that. It's not about like, screw money. I'm just going to do things that are free.
Yeah.
It's not that, but it really doesn't drive me as far as like purpose truly drives me because I know that's what I'm going to care about at the end of my life. And like that is like my ripple effect, right? It's like, how can I touch people's lives and that they can touch people's lives? And like, that's how you live forever. No one's actually going to live forever, but like your purpose is like how you'll live forever.
Yeah. That is how you obtain immortality.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, that takes me back to, I'm a big Stoic fan. It reminds me a lot of the Roman emperors and just, really any conqueror in time. Some definitely a little bit more ego driven than others and having a different kind of legacy and immortality in mind. But ultimately, that's immensely powerful, especially when we use and work towards a purpose-driven life to leverage that same purpose and experience or how to achieve purpose and how to achieve experiences to then pass back for everyone and anyone that wants to pay attention to what we left behind. That's what I'm here to do.
Absolutely. I don't think there's anything more important than like what you can help others with. And that doesn't have to be giving away $1 million. That can just
which is dope. If you can do that, I would love to do that.
I've done it. I have given away far more money than I've ever made. And I can say that.
Now you sound like my accountant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my accountant's listening, being like, why? But to me, like, I mean, again, I've been like in the lowest lows and the highest highs of life. And like, the purpose always brings it back. It's like, that's what I'm going to care about. I'm not going to care about a watch or a fancy car or something like that. I'm going to care about like what I did to help other people. And like, help the environment and help, animals or whatever my purpose is. Like for me, it's other people, but, for you, it could be, your kids or your parents or anything that you can do to help others. Like, that's how you live forever. So.
And, it's easier to be happy and to find the gratitude and value in all the experiences when we're at that highest high, right?
Yeah.
What about when we're at that lowest low?
Whew. I mean, I think one of the interesting things in our survey was when we asked people, what was the most valuable experience of your life? And 1/3 of people said a negative experience.
Really?
So it was like the worst experience of their life. Say it was like my mom got cancer and then I realized how, important our relationship was. And I stepped up and I took care of her. Or it was, I was homeless and I realized like I have to be grateful for everything that I have. Like once they got out of that situation, they were like so grateful. Or there was a bunch of people that said, I was addicted to, X drug and now I work in addiction, treatment.
Oh, wow, that's powerful.
And it's just like, then they're
Yeah.
helping people that were just like them because they can see how hard that is. And for me, like I would say the most valuable experience of my life, I was in that 1/3 is like going through depression and whatnot. Is like now I just truly feel so grateful like for all that I've had in my life. And like any day that I wake up happy, I'm like, this is great. Like,
Hell yeah, we're awake.
Yeah, I'm like,
right.
I'm alive. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch the sunrise, and it's gonna be awesome. And so I think there's a lot of reframing that we try to do in the book around negative experiences, whether it's something life changing like that, or if it's just like a funny story later, right?
Yeah.
Like I've been through a lot of things that. Like when I was a teenager, I went to jail for a day, and it was like really stupid. Honestly, it's like a funny
Sounds like
story.
you were living,
Right? Like it was like at the moment, I was like, "This is the worst day of my life."
Parents are gonna kill me.
Yeah, like I can't believe how stupid I am. But now I'm older. I'm like, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
So a lot of these like negative things can just be funny later, and I think that that's a good way to think about like when you're in the lowest of lows, maybe just like visualize yourself later on either thinking that it's funny or thinking like I can learn from this and I can grow from this and change from this. If you never go through anything negative in your life, like who are you going to be?
Yeah,
right?
truly.
Like probably pretty boring.
Boring, not able to really extract value or gratitude or lessons out of these things. When I think back on, was it when you polled everybody, was it 3 life experiences?
Oh yeah, one of the top 3.
Okay, so when I think of the top 3 life experiences I have had so far in my short 38 years of existence, two of the top ones for damn sure during were the worst experiences in my life, and without them, I would not literally be here sitting with you today. Losing my father at such an early age and having my identity and career and physical self radically ripped out from underneath me during my time in the military. Who I thought it was going to be was this guy that served his country, did 20 years and went on to retire while also having this amazing relationship with my father. And both of those were completely taken away from me. At the time, that's what I thought, and wrecked me and ruined me. Now, it's so weird to say this, but 2 of the best experiences of my life. I would not be here. We would not be having this conversation. I wouldn't have put myself on the path after that career shift to figuring out what it means to be human and how can I be better, and physical, mental resilience. It's 2 of the most important, radically life-changing situations I've ever gone through. That, of course, you never would wish on anybody, but damn it, I wouldn't change anything for it.
The hero's journey.
Right, yeah.
What was your 3rd? Getting married?
Yeah. Talk about my wife too much, but
no, you don't.
I love her. She's dope. But yeah, truly, marrying May was the greatest, hands down, the greatest thing in my life.
Oh, that's so
hands
sweet.
down the greatest.
Does she have a brother?
She does. He's single. Salman, I'll link you guys up after the show. All right. You like to eat? Persian food's the best. Oof.
Right.
Look, I haven't gone hungry in 10 years. I'm surprised I'm not 100 pounds bigger, but But, you know, Bridget, thank you so much for coming on the show. And before I get to the final question, you know, I just want to remind everybody about your work, the book, Experiential Billionaire, and just how much you have been a reminder to recognize what we have going for us right here and right now, first and foremost. And then how and why it's necessary to work towards a future that is not just something we're attaching our life and dreams and finances to, but actually has meaning and worth. And we're going to look back on it, you know, a year from now, 10 years from now, and still hold, if not have even more value and appreciation for it. So thank you.
Love it. Thank you so much for having me.
So ever forward, how do we move forward in life? That's what the show is all about. And so I always ask my guests the same question at the end. What does that mean to you? How would you say that you live a life ever forward?
I think we have very similar values. And the way that I live my life ever forward is honestly just trying to have as many new experiences as I can, whether that's, you know, learning something new, going somewhere new, meeting someone new, just trying to grow every single day. You know, if you just do one new thing every day, even if it's a tiny, tiny thing, like you'll be going ever forward, right?
That's so true. It doesn't have to be this grandiose, life-changing thing, which can be for some people, but you make it very real and very granular, very here and now. The next choice you make could change every choice for the rest of your life.
Exactly. It's like kind of like climbing a mountain peak, then you see another one that's higher. Like you don't see those things until you get there.
Absolutely. Well, Bridget, where can everybody go to connect with you, learn more about the book?
Sure. You can go to experientialbillionaire.com. My personal website's bridgethilton.com, which is where I book my keynotes and whatnot.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.